Welcome to the next in our series of talks on capital allowances. Last week, we considered the statutory restrictions which, with some very important exceptions, prevent allowances from being claimed for expenditure on buildings. Those restrictions were at Section 21, and today we are moving on, logically, to Section 22. Section 22 denies plant and machinery allowances for expenditure on structures and certain other assets in much the same way as Section 21 blocks the cost of buildings. In statutory terms, and again subject to an all-important exception offered by Section 23, Section 22 denies allowances for structures that are in List B. Now, the word structure is for these purposes defined to mean a fixed structure of any kind other than a building. As HMRC acknowledge, the meaning of fixed is not clear-cut. In the Capital Allowances Manual at CA 22090, HMRC guidance states that there is a spectrum of possible meanings. At one end of the spectrum, fixed could mean simply that the structure is set in place so that it does not move. At the other extreme, it could mean that it is attached permanently in a certain place on the land such that it can never be moved intact. Therefore, as HMRC state, it's necessary to consider the facts in each case. Most of the items included in List B are pretty clear-cut. For example, we have tunnels, etc., roads and railways, dams, docks. But in particular, note item 7, which is a catch-all for any other structures. The reference to the industrial buildings allowances sections remains, by the way, even though those sections were repealed several years ago. Beyond the specific items mentioned in List B, the question of what constitutes a fixed structure is not always clear-cut. For example, HMRC take the view that a fence is a structure, but arguably a fence lacks the longevity and weightiness that is typical of most other structures, and indeed of the various assets specifically mentioned within List B. In the rating case of CIR v. Smith, heard just over 100 years ago, back in 1914, the judge commented that a structure had to be artificial, of a certain degree of size and permanence, and distinguishable from the natural earth surrounding it. So, does a fence have the necessary size and permanence to be treated as a fixed structure and denied allowances for that reason? The point is, at least, open to debate. Section 22 also denies plant and machinery allowances for the cost of any works involving the alteration of land, though this is subject to another important exception, namely where the alteration is for the sole purpose of installing plant or machinery. Sections 21 and 22 are subject to Section 23, and next week we will start to look at that section, which is of fundamental importance.